You're not paranoid.
Okay.
All right. How should we start it? Hello
Hello, how are you?
and welcome
to
episode number 4. 4 of You're Not Paranoid podcast.
YNP in the house.
I'm Katie.
I am Kylie. I don't think we said this before.
Yeah, we realized I don't think introduced ourselves in episodes 2 or 3.
But we're doing it now.
So, hello. Maybe we'll add
Maybe we'll go
a
back
little
and be like,
blurb.
hey, that was us. We're still,
By
this
the
is
way.
still the same people. We're not like rotating out or anything.
Not yet.
Not yet. We'll see.
Same. Anyways.
So this is a cool podcast. Well, we think it's cool. About caring about scary things, such as.
I don't know.
Well, like in the first
are we just saying just random stuff?
Yeah, we talk about like things that can happen to us, or
like crime,
or bad things, or getting attacked, or
microorganisms eating your brain.
Yeah, and eventually we'll go over like natural disasters and maybe some paranormal things that happen to people. But basically, the point is people get scared of things for a reason. And other people don't believe that they have the right to be scared about those things, or they think they're dumb for caring about those things.
Yeah, so we're trying to change the word paranoid into being maybe prepared or preventative.
Yeah, avoiding the not inevitable, because a lot of people think that, oh, it's inevitable, it's going to happen, but no, it doesn't have to happen. If you're aware of what could happen, there are ways to go around that or prepare for it so it doesn't happen to you or your loved ones.
Yes.
And also, if you don't care about other people, you just care about yourself, and you feel like you're alone because you care, you can talk to us about it.
Yeah. This is a conversation. We don't want to come off as preachy or like do this and do that.
Because we know everything and nothing happens to us, because guess what it does?
Yeah, stuff happens. So we're here for each other.
Yeah. It started out as Katie and I being here for literally each other, but we want to be here for everyone else too.
Everyone.
If you're listening.
Hello?
And then you could be there for us too and be like, hey, like, you two weirdos aren't alone. We are also weird,
What if we just had one person listen and be like, yeah, you guys are on your own?
I guess we would just keep going.
Yeah. I mean, we'll
it's
listen to it.
It's not really much different. The only difference, we have these conversations already, but the microphone is in front of our faces, so it's like I see your eyes just on your mouth.
Yeah,
that's the only
it's a little weird.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that's our podcast.
Yeah, so if you like what you're hearing, keep it going.
Or
if you don't.
Do you want to say your tagline?
Oh yeah, I totally didn't catch that.
I was really trying to get all this podcasting stuff.
Yeah, so if you don't like what you hear, or rather, if your ignorance is bliss, don't listen to this.
Boom.
It rhymes.
That was Kylie.
Kind of proud of that one.
That was Kylie, by the way. She thought of that.
And this is also my voice.
Yeah.
And that's Katie.
I'm Katie.
I'm Kylie. And this episode
is about the Tylenol
murders.
We did it.
We did do it. That was awesome. Both of our hands were pointing at the same time. It was really cool. Because we're proud and we're on the same page.
But not about murder.
No. We're not proud of. Oh, yeah. No. I realized
we're
after the fact. I'm like. No. We're not proud of murder at all.
We're proud that we were able to say those 5 words.
Yeah, 3.
Well, but we also said is about.
Oh,
so we said more than 3 words together. So that's a goal.
We're working on it. But yeah, so this is the Tylenol murders, and it's basically a case about tampering medicine. So let's get into it. We're going to go back to 1982, Chicago metropolitan area.
And now time for a recording realization moment.
So, guess what?
I'm dumb.
No, you're not. We are figuring things out. So it turns out.
And full disclosure, because no one's perfect.
Hashtag no one's perfect. We're trying.
I realized, like 5 minutes into this recording of episode 4, I was recording off of the laptop's microphone and not our very nice
mouth
recording
microphones.
And I feel really dumb.
No.
So if you guys made it this far,
congrats. Your ears
will
be very happy.
So
what happened was we bought the microphones episode 1, returned them, opted for the computer ones, and then reintroduced them 5 minutes into episode 4. Right?
Yes,
that's fine.
Yeah.
People
so
will understand.
Episode 1 will have them.
Yeah.
2
and that's why
and 3
Kylie sounds a little distant.
At least
in
the
episodes
room's
2
small.
and 3, yeah, it's pretty good though. Can pick up my voice that well.
Yeah.
For how not that far, but can't touch your hand, so
yeah. Oopsie.
It's okay.
Now our voices will sound really nice.
Yay, or worse, depending on what's your preference.
Like now we really can't tell them apart.
Right. Well, now, yeah, we could tell before because Kylie sounded far away.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good trick.
Maybe that's how. Yeah. Should we just go back to the computer microphone?
Yeah, Kylie's the one that sounds farther away.
But now is next to Katie.
Right. We are just sharing the computer microphone now.
Our mouths are at the level of the microphone, and we're doing our best to not touch faces. Not true.
We're touching faces.
Sorry. It's fine.
Anyway, so I just want to make my apology.
I accept your apology, and also
thanks.
I don't think you should have to say sorry.
Well, I feel real dumb.
Yeah, no, you're not dumb though. We're figuring it out.
Okay.
We're podcast dumb, but we're not dumb. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'll take that.
Okay. It is all good in the podcast neighborhood. Speaking of neighborhoods, let's take it back to Chicago metropolitan area, 1982. Some good music back then, depending on your age.
Wait, what?
Or your preference. Good music.
Oh, I thought you said good news, and I was
like, no, this is not good news. I don't know how much we're going to cut out of the first part, but this is the Tylenol murders.
No, we'll keep that one.
Okay, cool. So yeah,
we'll just delete that.
Continuing.
You asking about it.
Okay, cool. Delete. Chicago metropolitan area, 1982. 7 people die over the course of 3 days, which is not abnormal because people die every day, but the reason that these deaths were considered abnormal was because they were unexpected and strange. So these began early morning of September 29th, 1982. 12-year-old Mary Kellerman wasn't feeling too well, and she told her parents, and they said, okay, well, here's, an extra strength Tylenol, you'll feel better. By 7 a.m., she died.
This is September?
This is September 29th.
Okay.
That same day, 27-year-old postal worker named Adam Janus of Arlington Heights, Illinois, also dies. Initially, his family thought it was a massive heart attack. So his brother and his sister-in-law, Stanley, who was 25, and Teresa, 19, of Lisle, Illinois, I believe is how that's pronounced, rushes to his home to console their family and be there for each other because it was so unexpected. While they were there, they both got severe headaches. It's really traumatizing to lose a family member, especially so suddenly. So they each take 1 to 2 extra strength Tylenols. And that very day, his brother Stanley dies, and his wife Teresa dies 2 days later. Over the next, so imagine that family's like, what is happening? Like they can't all be having heart attacks.
Yeah, we're grieving one family member and then
2 more
while that's going
back
on.
to back, boom, boom. And then over the next 2 days, 3 more people died whose deaths were also very unexpected. 35-year-old Mary McFarland of Elmhurst, Illinois, 35-year-old Paula Prince of Chicago, and 27-year-old Mary Weiner. I don't think that's how you spell Weiner. Weiner, W-E-I? Weiner. Yeah, Weiner.
Sure.
Of Winfield, Illinois. I kind of want to cut that out. After...
Wait, is W-I-N-E-R?
No, W-E-I.
Weiner.
Sure.
Right?
Yes. I before E.
No, but there's no C involved,
Except
and it has nothing to do with pronunciations. It's just the spelling.
That's all I remember.
Okay. Well, it's sad because she died, so let's get back to being sad.
That's mean.
It's okay. So after quickly investigating, it turns out that they were able to find out that they had all of them had in common was that they took Tylenol shortly before they died. So it turns out that every Tylenol consumed by them, all 7 were laced with a lethal dose of potassium cyanide at a level that was so toxic, it was said that each capsule could have provided thousands of fatal doses.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Jeez. That was a nurse who figured that out, by the way.
Oh.
And no one believed her.
Dang. I don't have that information, and I'm glad you do.
Thanks. Well, this is also my favorite murder episode, everyone
Oh,
says.
yeah.
We know.
I'm sure, I was going to say, I'm sure that other podcasts have covered it too, but
that's the one I've listened
to. Our best reference, because we know that one for sure. And we've heard it on there. So the Tylenol itself was manufactured by McNeil Consumer Products, which is a subsidiary of Johnson & Johnson, which everyone has heard of.
What's that?
You know, the shampoo and the soaps and everything else? That's them. So they actually were a huge part of informing the public about this warning about the fact that these Tylenol could be laced. And so they actually issued a massive recall of more than 31 million bottles that were already distributed.
Can you imagine?
Or being in the process of being distributed.
Like, your Tylenol may or may not have cyanide in it.
Like, don't take it because you will definitely die. Is basically what, yeah.
But because we don't know.
If you have that headache, deal with it.
Yeah.
Or take a different
Yeah, apparently
pill.
Tylenol was like the leader.
Yeah, it was a huge leader at the time.
So I don't know what else you would take.
Yeah, I don't know.
Generic.
Yeah, over
up
the
and
counter
up brand.
But Tylenol was the most reliable, I'm guessing, because it was the most popular.
Yeah.
The best marketing. Let's go with that.
Sure.
So it turned out that the investigations into these found more laced capsules that were discovered in a few other grocery stores and drugstores in the Chicago area, but fortunately had not yet been sold or taken by anyone.
That's good.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that kind of went through my head is like, what if someone like lived alone and died? Like if they were older or something, like would they have known if there were more? Because all of these were mysterious.
Yeah.
And
that's a good point. I never
you know
thought
what I
of
mean?
that.
Like, I don't know. Who's to say that there was like an older gentleman or woman living alone and like, oh, they already had heart problems. Like, who's to say that they did a full investigation or did the blood work that we might do today if they already had like some kind of problems?
Yeah.
But anyways, that's just my own personal thinking. So the company McNeil and Johnson & Johnson offered replacement capsules to those who turned in their pills that were already purchased and offered a reward. They put it out there like, hey, if anyone has any information on what happened with this, who tampered the medication, like, we will reward you, please give us anything, because this could be really, really big.
Yeah.
And they technically didn't know at that time how big it could go. So it turned out that the pills actually came from different production plants, and they were sold in different drugstores around the Chicago area. So they're trying to find out, like, where did these come from? Was it all in one store? Was it,
one plant,
one city, one plant? Where, can we narrow these down? And Johnson & Johnson was able to narrow it down that they did come from different locations. And because of that, it was likely that the bottles were taken. The cyanide was laced into those onto those pills, or into them. I can't remember exactly.
Like stolen from the stores.
They could have been purchased. They could have been purchased.
Oh, and then someone stuck them back on the shelf.
Thank you. Yeah. So basically, the point is that they were not the responsibility. It wasn't the manufacturer who did it. They were already taken, distributed to the stores, then taken off the shelves, laced, put back onto the shelves. So, you could go to the supermarket and just put it on the shelf. People
like
are less likely to question you if you're putting something on the shelf than if you're taking it off the shelf. You know what I mean? It's a lot easier to, like, I don't know. In my opinion, I could see how you get away with that. Like, never mind. If they see you take it out of your bag and put it, that's more. But if someone just glances over and sees you looking at it and putting it on the shelf, like everyone does that, they'll like look at the.
We're not condoning.
No. I'm just saying I can see how this could. I can see how this can go unnoticed, I guess, is what I'm saying. I just wrote the same sentence 3 times. So during this investigation, one man actually comes forward saying that he did it. He's the one who laced the pills. His name is...
Easy. That's easy.
Oh, I know. How? It's like, you know what? I'm a good guy today. I'm going to say I did it. Nope. He said he laced the pills. He wrote a ransom letter to John. Oh, yeah. His name is James Lewis, by the way. He wrote a ransom letter to Johnson & Johnson demanding $1 million in exchange for stopping the poisonings.
Oh, I was going to say, what kind of ransom could he be writing?
Yeah, so he's saying, oh, I'm doing it.
I have more.
You want me to stop?
Okay.
Give me $1 million, and then I'll leave the country, so I'm no longer able to do it. No, he didn't say that.
So not,
he didn't say that.
But not only that, it's like, but then also, like, they're not going to prosecute you.
Yeah, like, what do you think is going to happen? So then I wrote, like, how you know it's the 80s, because, like, $1 million is, like, huge amount of money. I mean, it is a lot of money. I would love $1 million, but it's just funny that's, like, the...
In today's money, that would be
$500 million. Well, I've had billions. Why have billions when you can have millions?
I mean, it's more. 500 million versus 5 billion. 500 million is more.
I was trying to make an Austin Powers quote, but I realized you don't watch that movie, and so you were like taking it a different way, and I really like it.
Oh.
Yeah. Anyways, so he writes a ransom letter saying that he did this. He wants $1 million, he'll stop the poisonings. So after a lengthy cat and mouse game with police and federal investigators, that was a copy paste. They determined that, and I'm guessing this wasn't too difficult to determine. I don't know, it was the 80s, but they determined that he lived in New York and therefore had no legitimate links to the poisonings in Chicago.
Oh, so not even like I visited here.
Right. So I mean, they know they investigated. They investigated. Like, no, there's, we don't believe you. Basically, called him out. And because of his fake ransom letter, he was charged with extortion and sentenced to 20 years in prison. Because guess what? You don't freaking mess around with that stuff.
And also, it probably made them look good because they arrested someone in relation to the case. Yeah. And, I mean, he probably didn't think that was going to happen to him. Like, I'm just going to say I did it. I'm just going to get $1 million for pretending I did it.
Because murdering people is not that big a deal. It's worth $1 million, really.
Really doesn't make any. He did not think that one through.
No, he didn't. It's like I don't even have to commit the murders. I'm just gonna say I did and get money. But no, don't do that.
That's not how it works.
Don't take the police off of their investigation when they could be putting all the resources into that, finding the actual murderer. Exactly, wasted time. And so I think it was right that they did that. Personally, it's making an example out of him. Like, don't you dare, fake tamper with medicine and then really tamper with an investigation. Not cool. So, in 1988, quote from a news, 1988 quote, no, in a quote from a newspaper written in 1988, like an article, the quote stated that Mr. Lewis denied any responsibility for the poisonings. And investigators said that they lacked evidence to file murder charges against him. So I think that they wanted
the scapegoat.
They wanted him to be the one. They did. But they didn't have enough evidence. And then him saying he actually didn't do it, he's not it. Which, is good because we don't want justice to be put in the wrong place. You don't want to stop it looking for the murderer just because someone says they did it.
Yeah.
you want
But
true.
They
It's-
kind of did.
Yeah, which they still stopped him, but they still.
Well, no, but they also kind of stopped. Sorry, I did the conspiracy theories.
I know, we're
behind
getting
this
there, we're
one,
getting
so
there.
I'm like,
You're jumping ahead. Okay, we will get to that. So this is just what the articles are saying. This is what the police are saying. So this is just what was reported to the American public.
They're lying to the American
world.
public.
All right, so going back to Mr. Lewis, in 1995, after serving 13 of the 20-year sentence, he was released back into society.
Cool.
And guess
What's he
what
up
happens
to?
when someone, not necessarily him, but whoever the alleged murderer is, gets away with gets away with murder successfully.
Did someone kill him?
That's not where I was going. I was going to say copycats. People copy it because they know they can get away with it.
A lot of people still blamed him or something. So when he got out of jail,
Yeah.
they're like, let's get him.
Oops, sorry. I could see that, but I didn't follow his life. I don't know where he is or what what his Facebook's about, but
we'll look up his Facebook later.
no, that's probably not cool. But there's
Hey,
probably
what's
so
up?
many other. There's probably a lot of James Lewis's, and it's
He
like
definitely changed his name.
yeah, there's no way. You imagine me like, hey, that's my uncle.
Oh no! Write to us if you know if he's your
If
uncle.
you know him, tell us why he did that. Anyways, so copycats popped up out of, coming out of everywhere. And hundreds of incidents across the United States began shortly right after the recall. So we're kind of going back. I know that he was released 13 years later, but just kind of to put it into perspective, what was happening and how the country was kind of feeling after the incident, after the murders. The FDA reported that more than 270 different incidents of product tampering in the month following the Tylenol deaths occurred.
Wow, 1 month?
Yeah, 270.
And that's not fast enough to get those tamper-proof bottles out there either.
No. This is people being like, oh, this is my chance. So the copycats lace the pills with, everything with, ranging from like rat poison to hydrochloric acid. Like that's not good.
Come on.
Making people sick all throughout the United States.
Why?
Because
what is wrong with people?
Because they're a-holes and they take advantage of situations like that. They're like, well, I didn't think about that. I should just do the same thing. Like this a-hole, Mr. 31-year-old Joseph Melling, who placed cyanide-filled capsules that he put in 5 packages of Sudafed decongestant.
Oh, no.
Prosecutors said that he wanted to kill his wife, who's named Jennifer, in order to claim $700,000 in insurance money.
Wow.
Yeah. So, okay, he tried to kill his wife. What about the other bottles of Sudafed? Yeah, so he put the other tampered bottles back on his shelves to divert the suspicion from himself. So it wouldn't look like they wouldn't be able to track as easily, kind of like the Tylenol murders. They wouldn't be able to know who did it. And unfortunately, later that month, the other capsules took the lives of Kathleen Daniker, who was 40, of Tacoma, and Stan McWhorter, who was 40, of Lacey, both in Washington.
Jeez.
So then this also began another recall, which was $17 million worth nationwide by Sudafed, with the manufacturer of Burroughs Wellcome Company, which that investigation revealed that there were 2 cyanide-filled capsules found in homes and another store, I believe in that area. So then Joseph Melling ended up being convicted by a jury of fatal product tampering, which alone carries a maximum life in prison sentence.
So they had that law in place by then? Or that was already on the...
Couldn't tell you.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
But it's good that they had that.
Yeah, so I want to say was this particular situation, I believe was 3 years later.
Okay. So then that would make sense.
Yeah. So I believe by then they would have already been aware that they should do something, that the government should make this a law. And so, yeah, he was convicted of fatal product tampering, which was a maximum life sentence in prison, as well as perjury and insurance fraud.
Wow.
Pretty gnarly, right?
Like,
there's other ones out there too.
yeah, there's a one that it's almost the exact same thing as that. I think it was on MFM2, where like the woman was trying to collect insurance money on her husband.
Yep.
So she did the same thing where it was like poisoned some sort of over-the-counter medication.
Extra strength Excedrin. I have the article
Oh,
right
that
here.
one?
Yeah, that was the other one.
Like what's so sad is like someone else ended up dying too. And then she was like, the investigators or someone were like, oh, it was natural causes. He had something. And then she was just like, no. Like, because that was part of the insurance, was if it was like an accident versus like something else. So I think she wanted it to be poisoned.
Yes. It said,
sorry if I was saying.
No, you're right. No, you're right. It said that she opened a number of containers of extra strength Excedrin and basically emptied the capsules and filled them up with cyanide. She tried to conceal the murder of her husband, Bruce Nickel, by killing a random stranger.
Yeah.
That's what it was. And then after heavily insuring her husband's life and trying to poison him in various ways, she remembered the unsolved Tylenol murders, which then resulted in him dying June 5th, 1986, and her random victim, Sue Snow, on June 11th.
That's so annoying.
If you want to not be with your husband, get a divorce.
I know.
If you have your own issues with someone, don't kill them. Don't kill other people. Like the article says, she remembered the Tylenol murders and was like, aha, like this is my route.
This is how I'll do it.
Divorce won't do.
Or just leaving.
I must be in a cell forever by myself, and that's the only way
that's what
I'll ever be happy. Like, what the heck? And she did get caught. Don't yawn. This isn't boring.
I'm crashing.
Don't crash. But yeah, so the lady who did that to her husband and Sue Snow, what led her to do that to her husband? That's not the point. You don't murder people. Yeah. You work it out over therapy, or you get divorced. But yeah, this lady, her name was Stella Nickel of Auburn, Washington. She was sentenced to 90 years in prison. So she's gone for, good, basically.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, and this was 1986. So not too long after the whole, Tylenol murder situation. Pretty gnarly.
Yeah.
That's so scary to think that you like the thing that you think is going to help you with your symptoms of not feeling good ends up being what makes you meet your demise.
Yeah. And just the fact that there's nothing stopping you from opening a bottle, even if you were to do it right in the store. Yeah. No seals, no.
Yeah, because this is before.
Nothing.
Sorry, that's good to say. This was before there were any seals on the bottles. It was just a bottle that you open, kind of like a water bottle.
Maybe have a cotton swab in there. Like, this will stop people.
Yeah, but no, it just keeps the moisture out. It doesn't stop people from putting cyanide.
Yeah, and then I think those capsules. Are also the capsules where they just kind of fit into each other, like those two plastic things, and then there's the actual beads. Yeah, inside. They call them like caplets or something like that, which take more. That's what they ended up doing to like. Yeah, the deter people. Were, I think the thing after.
Yeah, that's what they ended up making. The manufacturers of the drugs made to make it more obvious if something was like tampered with. Yeah, because it'd be more difficult to tamper with those versus the pills that just pull apart. Yeah, which they still make those, but they're not over the counter, I believe. As
but then
often.
What if they are on it?
Ooh. Is this your lead into conspiracy theories?
No, but we could talk about it.
Let's talk about it.
Talk about it.
Let's get freaky. And talk about stuff that
I looked
a
up
lot of people don't believe.
This case was never solved.
Oh yeah, so no one found out who. Yeah, so the Tylenol murderer was.
They do not have anyone in custody for this, or so people say. But in the immediate aftermath of this incident, so let's see. Before this happened, Tylenol controlled 35% of over-the-counter pain relief market.
Mm-hmm.
And then only a few weeks after the murder, they had less than 8% of the market.
Yeah, that's a huge dip.
So, I mean, maybe it was a competitor.
Oh my God.
I don't know. No one knows, actually, technically.
Yikes.
So after this incident is what prompted all of the seals and tamper-proof stuff and the little foil thingies. They worked with the FDA to create those. And then what you were saying, they have the caplets now that are easier to, or it makes it harder to tamper with the actual pill itself.
Yeah, versus just like sprinkling some stuff on there.
I can't imagine.
That's why I pictured it at first.
Like, I've opened the pill and I took all the medicine out and I put cyanide in it. So now we have tamper-proof packaging and pills that you can't really get into.
Yeah, it makes it more difficult to tamper. Oh, I was talking about like sprinkling. Like when
salt,
for some reason
like
at
Salt
first,
Bae?
like Salt Bae, but like, I don't even want to say it.
Say it.
Cyanide Bae. That's super awful. But like just sprinkling it on there or something like that. I don't know.
Gross. Like, who thought that was a good idea? Like, this, nothing bad could happen from this.
Yeah.
It's always, it's like, oh, I wonder why they have tamper-proof. Like, there's always a reason that, like, safety measures, sadly, are usually implemented.
Because someone has to come in and ruin everything and just it's stuff that you wouldn't even think about because you're not a demented
because you're not
being.
crazy. Yeah.
Because you don't want to kill people.
But fortunately for Tylenol's sake, within a year and an investment of more than $100 million, their sales rebounded to like their normal levels.
Yay, Tylenol.
And then they became the favorite again.
They were trusted again by the American public.
And then it was funny because that's why I asked you when the timeline was this, or when it was, because apparently a month later, in October of 1982, Tylenol was already running ads saying like, trust us.
Yeah, so kind of like Wells Fargo was like, we messed up. We're sorry.
But trust us. We're working on it. And then meanwhile, like, no one's been arrested. Like, nothing, you know. Like,
that's so awful.
Yeah, like, I'm going to pass.
They're like, we're losing money.
I'll keep my headache for now.
Yeah.
And then also stemming from that, a year later. Yeah, sure. Was the quote unquote Tylenol bill passed by the good old government. That passed 292-0.
Oh, good.
In the House. I'm glad. There's just one person. Leave my medicine alone.
Yikes.
So this bill allowed the FBI and other federal agencies to immediately be involved with tampering cases. And it would allow for penalties up to life in prison if death results from the tampering. The Senate also passed a similar bill. Surprise.
Was this like the first time that a bill's ever passed? So like,
I would
unanimously?
say it's probably, yes. That's probably one of the few. They're like,
that's pretty crazy.
I mean, can you really argue against it?
No, better not.
I mean, I would.
Then I would look at them and be like, what do you know?
Conspiracy.
It's there.
It's in the government. Just kidding.
They're listening.
They're always listening. It's fine. They did the right thing. But so the bill also made it a federal crime to tamper with the product, label, or container of any food or drug if the individual knows the tampering will cause death or bodily injury. I don't know what that means.
Like someone is doing it unknowingly?
Like if I was just like, I don't like how this label looks, and I took my Sharpie out and started like coloring a flower.
Maybe like they relabel it, or if they're like selling it as something else.
Maybe.
I think that's what that is trying to get at.
Yeah, so
and the fact that it shouldn't be tampered with if it's a medicine or a food.
Yeah.
Just don't mess with stuff.
But I feel like that would just lead for like the defense saying like they didn't know.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So it's the whole knowingly thing. I think that goes into the whole insane versus like the Cyanide stuff.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that's what that's about.
So the bill only covered products that were consumed or ingested, plus products like cosmetics, laundry detergent, and disposable diapers.
Because laundry detergent is more important than...
I liked this.
like stuff that you inject into you? Like, I don't understand that. So they didn't specify that.
I don't know. Just eating, ingesting, or putting on your face, or your clothes, or your...
So basically, if it touches you, or you eat it.
Mm-hmm. Or you wear diapers. Disposable
or you wear diapers. Only oh, okay, yeah. That makes sense. I guess.
And then I like this line from the article. It would not cover non-personal items such as lawnmowers and motor oil. I was like, oh, okay, that's cool to know.
People were tampering with their lawnmowers.
But I mean, I feel like that would already be covered. Like, because then I'm assuming you're trying to make some sort of explosive.
Oh.
I don't know, but
explosive grass.
The article really wanted you to know that it didn't cover lawnmowers.
That's weird. See, that probably goes into something else.
Ooh.
We should note
conspiracy. So the penalties for this Tylenol bill,
mm-hmm.
$25,000 fine and up to 10 years in prison for an unsuccessful attempt to tamper.
But
so
if
just
you're
even
successful.
trying, attempted tampering. And then a fine of up to $100,000. And I don't know if these change with time because this is 1983.
You would think, like with inflation.
So this was 1983.
Okay.
I just thought of that right now.
That's a really good question.
It's probably not even...
Any lawyers out there who also are good with money, let us know.
Let us know. What's money?
We want some one day.
I would like $100,000. And so it goes all the way up to $100,000 and life in prison if the tampering results in death.
Well, that's murder.
If bodily injury, the penalty could be a fine of up to $100,000 and 20 years in prison.
I feel like there's got to be some scale, like to what extent of bodily injury.
Yeah.
Like you'd think like, oh, someone who's,
if it affected their brain and they're like not.
Yeah, or they're like paralyzed or blind. Like those are really big deals versus, I don't know, a rash.
Yeah.
Like there's got to be some scale there.
Yeah, that would
But to think that someone is 20 years, anyways.
Yeah. So
you get what I'm saying.
That's about the article and the immediate aftermath. What I was kind of wondering in this case, and this is kind of just like a side note, because it talked a lot about like the bottles weren't tamper proof and all that stuff. But I was wondering about child proofing containers, and I was like, well, were they already child proof or not?
Yeah.
And so I'm going to assume that they were, because then I went off on a tangent and looked up child proofing history. The child proofing cap was invented by Dr. I'm going to say Henry, because he's Canadian, so it's probably French. Burault from Ontario, Canada. Okay. He invented the current day childproof cap in 1967.
Wow. That was a pretty long time ago.
Yeah. Because apparently kids getting into medicine was basically an epidemic.
Oh dear. Well, if you'll see things that are like little pills that look like candy. Look, it's colored. I want to taste it. But you'd think that when they tasted it, it probably didn't taste very good.
Yeah. But they're like, Mommy and Daddy take these candies.
I want some too. Don't do it, kids.
Don't eat medicine like candy.
Don't just eat candy. The stuff with the pretty colors.
That's the real medicine. That's the joke in our family. It's like, oh, give me some of that medicine, and it's like M&Ms. So before the childproof cap in Canada alone, there were 100,000 annual cases claiming the lives of at least 100 kids.
Wow.
In a year of kids getting into medicine.
So just that's saying that 100 kids died. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they weren't greatly affected or went into
100,000 out of 100,000
hospitalized
cases,
or something.
Yeah.
Wow. And that's just known. That's not to say like what kids were doing it and they're fine.
Yeah.
And just like, oh, these are great. Nothing happens. Yeah.
He was the one that did the pushing down.
Push and twist.
They called it. It was patented. Patented.
Don't hear yourself.
Words are hard. The Palmintern.
Palm
in
turn. All right.
This apparently dropped the rate of child poisonings by 91%.
Is this because kids don't have palms, or
they're dumb?
They don't know which way to turn,
I guess, or they can't read. So I'm guessing this is like babies.
Oh, yeah.
Because on the bottle, it'll tell you how to open it.
That makes sense.
But like dropping the child poisonings by 91% just by having that one thing.
Holy moly. I totally was thinking about the fact that it's hard to open for kids versus that's a huge percent.
Yeah.
91%? And that's in Canada?
Yeah.
Wow.
But then I think everyone adopted it.
I would hope
but a little fun history fact. We'll go all the way back to 500 BCE.
They also had palms.
Yes. And what archaeologists and researchers think to be a form of childproof caps.
What?
Yeah. So in 1986 in Guatemala, a team was researching and doing their archaeology business. And they found these jars that looked like the modern day kind of like childproofing type of lid on top of these jars. And they're like, this is interesting.
Could they not open them because there's no directions?
There wasn't. They couldn't. I'm not gonna say because I don't even know what language it was, but but apparently they used chocolatey beverages as part of their spiritual and religious practices.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're like, I bet that's what they kept locked up. And so they sent the jars to Hershey's laboratories. And they tested it, and it was chocolate.
Like chemical testing basically revealed the same chemical profile of chocolate, because that's really freaking old.
I know.
So the fact that there was traces of that, I mean, if it's preserved in a jar, is a jar?
Yeah, I'm assuming some sort of like clay jar type.
That's
of thing.
Crazy.
Yeah, so
we've been smart for a long time. We just paused.
Just a little fun little side
We're like,
note.
let's bring it back. Maybe that doctor wasn't an archaeologist, was he? Did he find it? Was like, what if this is a great idea?
His past life, he was a Mayan spiritual leader.
Ooh, and he was like, I
already know how to do this.
Yeah,
I've been doing this for palm and turn
years, thousands of years.
But yeah, sorry, that was just a little side note.
Mm-hmm.
But going back to the Tylenol murders,
mm-hmm.
there's a lot of people on the interwebs that like to. The main theory is that, or one of the main conspiracies is that the Unabomber Ted Kaczynski was the Tylenol murderer.
That's just kind of sad. Everything we don't know, we're like, the Unabomber.
But Kylie, the initials TK, Tylenol killer, Ted Kaczynski. Period. End of sentence. He did it.
Because when you like, when you're like, oh, this is my claim to fame, I'm going to choose Tylenol.
Yes.
And then what also starts with the K? Killing.
So I have to kill people.
Ted Kaczynski.
Yep.
He doesn't like people though. So why would he go into Chicago?
He was living there
at that time?
Yep.
Tell me about it.
So, people say that Ted Kaczynski, aka the Unabomber, was the Tylenol killer because he was born in Chicago and his family lived in the Chicago suburbs before he moved to Montana. And then apparently people have mapped out where these stores that had the contaminated Tylenol were, and it's like, ooh, his parents' house was right in the center. And then apparently also he had a wood fascination.
Well, like based on his cabin.
And then like a lot of like the victims of his bombings had like Wood as a last name or lived on some sort of like wood drive or all that kind of stuff. And then supposedly the same kind of connections can be made to the Tylenol murders. But then I was like, how do you know who the people were going to be? But I think it was saying more like the shopping centers he chose. It was like the Elk Grove whatever shopping center, and then the other one was like Wood something center. So that's that.
I mean, that's a little bit of a far stretch.
I mean...
Because this happened in 1982.
Yes, and his bombings were in the 70s?
Can I get rude for a minute?
Yeah.
I happened to pull up the Ted Kaczynski
Tell us.
Wikipedia, and he has a quote that said, basically it's talking about him living in Montana.
Mm-hmm.
And he's describing it. He's like, it's kind of a rolling country. This is not his voice, but I'm just going to pretend like I'm him for a second, I guess. It's kind of a rolling country, not flat. And when you get to the edge of it, you find these ravines that cut very steeply into cliff-like drop-offs, and there was even a waterfall there. It was about a 2 days hike from my cabin. That was the best spot until the summer of 1983.
Ooh.
So his own quote, unless he's like mind-twisting America or United States, to be like, this is my alibi that I'm going to say because they're later going to find out about this. And so I'm going to backtrack because I've already gone back in time.
However, the FBI reopened the Tylenol killer, or it's not the Tylenol killer.
No one's killing Tylenol. They're like, this Tylenol sucks. We're going to kill this business. No.
They reopened the Tylenol murder case in 2009.
Oh, wow. That's pretty recent.
And then the FBI in 2011 was trying to get Ted Kaczynski's DNA, but they wouldn't say why. And so everyone on the internet's like, we were right.
Oh. But this was 7 years ago.
And nothing came of it. Apparently he's still alive.
Well,
or he was then.
Then, I mean...
It's okay, so the Tylenol poisonings were 20 minutes from his house. And then, but according to this huntakiller.com, legit website.
Hunt a killer. That also, sorry, just like a pause.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of sounds like you're not really supposed to kill
killer?
people, so therefore you shouldn't like hunt the killers.
I don't know. Is it the game thing?
I don't know. Sorry, go ahead.
They constructed a timeline that could place Kaczynski in Lombard at the time of the poisonings. Just saying. Oh, and then someone back to the wood thing. Mm-hmm. Someone was saying or pointed out that Johnson & Johnson, guess what their full names are?
Is it Ted Kaczynski?
No, it's Robert Wood Johnson and James Wood Johnson.
Wait, what?
Ooh, we're getting deeper.
Who would have thought?
And then there's a picture that they caught at one of the
I was wondering about
stores
surveillance or anything like this.
It's a very, very grainy 1982 picture, but he's got a pretty decent beard. But guess what? So did that. What was his name? James Lewis?
James Bond? Yeah, James Lewis.
He also had a beard. But then everyone's like, oh, look, it's Ted Kaczynski.
Well, of course, is that, when you already have something in your head and then you make the facts fit your kind of motive or, the facts in air quotes kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So, of course, it's easy to say at that point. Just a little Wikipedia.
And then, sorry, were you going to...
Conversation back at you. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. I was like, I was cutting you off, and then I was like, let's not cut you off. But then I realized you were waiting for me to talk. So bombings, when did the September 29th? You know what? Yeah, possibly. Because, he was in May 1982, he was in Tennessee at Vanderbilt University was one of the bombings. And then July 2nd, 1982, UC Berkeley. And then it doesn't happen again until May 15th, 1985. So technically there's time in between.
Off to poison people. Yikes. Well, he was supposedly also the Zodiac killer. But there's a section from his manifesto, and it's also numbered apparently. Section 145. This is, quote, imagine a society that subjects people to conditions that make them terribly unhappy, then gives them the drugs to take away their unhappiness. End quote. People use that as like, see, he doesn't like drugs.
No, I took that differently.
But
it's more to me. I feel like he's more of the ironic kind of guy, right?
Well,
who's
he's
like
extremely intelligent.
Yeah, very intelligent.
Got
very disturbed.
Messed up by MK Ultra.
Mm-hmm. Have you watched the Unabomber?
Yes.
I feel like we need to do a whole other episode like just on the Unabomber as well.
Or it could just be about that kind of government testing.
Or 2 separate ones. There's a lot to talk about here. We're trying to like keep it focused, but yeah, holy cow. The fact that it's unknown.
That's what I think drives people crazy.
Yeah. They want an answer.
Yeah.
So to them, I feel like the easiest, that's what I was trying to say before, the easiest, and like I said, air quotes, is to blame it on Ted Kaczynski because then they can move past it and they can be at ease and think that it can never happen again.
Yes. So that's one that I think is interesting. The other one that I could see is like a little bit more plausible is that it was a cover-up and that it happened at the factories.
Oh, dang.
And, I mean, this is probably not as equally as non-credible as the other one. Can you
rephrase that? Because I just got really confused.
It's probably on the same level as Ted Kaczynski in terms of believing it, because I think it started from a former employee of Johnson & Johnson who, in his own words, didn't leave on good terms. If you look him up on Amazon, he has a whole bunch of books about how Tylenol and Johnson & Johnson are bad.
How was he able to do that? You'd think
it's self-published.
Oh, okay, there it is. There it is.
Because I was looking up like
so freedom of speech,
and then I saw this book and it was like the Tylenol Mafia, marketing, murder, and Johnson & Johnson, revised 2nd edition. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then I like read more and it's like, oh, this guy. His name is Scott Bartz, if anyone's interested. But he's claiming that was basically all like a cover up because it made Tylenol look bad. And like the whole like madman theory of some random person just going in and like poisoning stuff is like absurd. Yeah. And that they kind of did like a half-ass investigation and all this kind of stuff.
He told them he was going to reveal the truth and then they fired him.
No.
Or something like that. No?
Mm-mm.
So why was he fired? Just not on good terms?
He said he was laid off in, quote, not on the best of terms. But they didn't say why. He spent 3.5 years researching this book before he wrote it.
What if he did it?
Ooh.
What if he did it and was like, Tylenol's like, you can't work here anymore because you poisoned these people. And he's like, no, Tylenol made me, or they did it.
So it's still a cover-up.
So it's still, it could be, what if it's like a double cover?
Ooh.
And that's why Tylenol hasn't, maybe they've sued him for defamation. I would if I was Tylenol. But what if they did? What if that was what happened? I don't know. I have no idea. This is all speculation and opinion. Let me put that out there. We have no idea. This is just internet conspiracy theories, which the conspiracy theories do what they're good at and making you question everything.
Yeah. So basically no one knows. But I mean, some like company that powerful wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
But it's just weird. Well, the thing that counteracts that is that it was just in one city.
Yeah. And that's what makes that. I think that's why police and investigators think it was bought and then put back.
Yeah. Because
what is that person going to go driving across state lines and putting them all over the place?
Yeah.
I feel like also the fact that this is not like professionally speaking at all. This is just thinking out loud. Like the whole podcast is thinking out loud. No, I don't.
That's Kylie's favorite artist, by the way.
You're so mean.
Everyone send her Ed Sheeran.
No, he's not bad. I just don't like that song.
She just hates
him. Too catchy. Dang it, and I lost my train of thought.
Oh no. You're thinking out loud about non-professional ideas about Tylenol being in Chicago.
Okay, I think
and not being crossing state lines.
Yeah.
It's easier for someone to put it on the shelf.
Damn it.
Elf on the shelf. Oh no, I'm sorry. See, Ed
No,
Sheeran
it's okay.
ruins another
I got
moment.
so like infuriated that I just
Thanks
let myself.
a lot, Ed Sheeran.
No,
This podcast is not sponsored by Ed Sheeran.
Katie, stop. Okay, now you're making me laugh. Okay.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. I was basically saying that I'm not professional. It's just my opinion. And that, thank you. I helped myself out, but you also helped me. But just don't say that name again because it's so distracting for some reason. It's my weakness, I guess. I was saying that they mentioned that there were thousands of like lethal doses in these pills. So it probably wasn't done by someone who knows what they're doing.
Yes.
Because if they really wanted to
maximize the
right, if they wanted to really like maximize and do it in a bunch of things,
they have a finite amount of cyanide.
Right. So also you would think that, I don't know. I feel like, yeah, you're right. I feel like there may be, I'm not an investigator, but maybe more could have been researched on like what are the laboratories in the area, like who. I mean, we don't know what they did investigate. They probably did a huge investigation.
And it's the whole thing of. The one thing that I can see it being like, because apparently someone was trying to make a documentary about this, and they were asking a lot of questions, and then all of a sudden the case is reopened, which makes all of those files sealed again. And as of now, the 2016 article, the case is still open.
So now the files are sealed.
Yeah. So no one can access any of those like investigation files that are now like 30-something years old, which would normally be released.
How does that make, I'm not a lawyer, but how does that make any sense? If you're trying to reopen a case, why wouldn't the files that now maybe we have better technology nowadays could then incorporate that evidence to then find out what happened? Like, these people's lives still matter. Just because they died 30 years ago doesn't mean it doesn't matter.
That's what I want, like, because you always see on all the like NCIS or like CSI shows of like they can test I feel like you could test the cyanide and find some sort of like marker or something that
like where did that cyanide come from?
Where
did that manufacturer come from? Who's buying that cyanide? Because I mean, you don't just get as far as I know, you don't just buy cyanide at the grocery store.
And what else is it used for? It's like, because I know like some things that are used in labs are like have a purpose, but it's if someone drinks it, it's going to be lethal kind of thing.
Like other chemicals in the lab, you don't just drink them.
Cyanide have a purpose, like where you could find it?
We should probably Google that.
Well, I wasn't thinking about it until now, because we're going to solve this.
Yeah, let's do a backtrack, and
at the end of this episode, we're going to reveal who the Tylenol killer is.
Cyanide purpose. Cyanide purpose.
Heard it first.
Okay, so here we go. In manufacturing, cyanide is used to make paper, textiles, and plastics.
Okay, so it's everywhere.
It is present. Yes, it is present in the chemicals used to develop photographs. The cyanide salts are used in I don't know these words. Metallurgy for electroplating, metal cleaning, and removing gold from its ore.
Ooh.
And then cyanide gas is used to exterminate pests and vermin in ships and buildings.
Okay, so
that's from the CDC facts about cyanide.
So I feel like if it's in the process of making plastics,
there you go. What are the factories in Chicago in that area, or the paper, textiles, and I don't know. People don't have access to cyanide so easily. So it has to be someone who knows what it does, who doesn't know it well enough that they could like determine the correct dose. But also is so evil that they don't care about human life and are doing it to just see if they can do it or what. I mean, that's every question, right? For every murder, like, why are you doing this? Obviously, this person who did it is mentally disturbed. But it's just crazy.
Yeah.
I feel like there's more to it, and that's why people are so obsessed with it, because there's so much more to it, and we're not getting the answers, and therefore people categorize it as a conspiracy theory and or paranoid. Yeah. Which is why we're doing this podcast, because I feel like you're right. There's definitely more to it.
Yeah, I feel like it definitely leads to some paranoia when cases like this are so bizarre and like never really heard of before that time, and then there's no resolution to it.
I mean, yeah, I get to I mean, this might be, it's Chicago. There's probably a lot of things happening in Chicago, especially, in the 80s and even today. There's a lot of crime and a lot of other things that police need to put their efforts towards.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that it stopped and, that whole thing.
Yeah, that's
I can
also
see
a weird thing.
the fact that it stopped, they probably think, okay, well, we're going to put these laws in place. No one else is going to be able to get away with it. We don't know who did it, but even if they try to do it, they wouldn't be able to do it again. But heaven forbid, anyone working at Tylenol doesn't have the capability or the capacity to do it before it gets sealed. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just, like we said, not trying to make people feel uncomfortable about big companies, but they do have a lot of power.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a big deal to see Tylenol drop that big in, their stocks and their sales. And I don't know about stocks, but their sales. I'm assuming their stocks too.
Mm-hmm.
That's something maybe wasn't not as investigated as maybe it could have been.
Yeah, if that's someone's motive to remotely watch people, random people die
Mm-hmm.
because they put poison in something and they get away with it. And
Who's
then
to say they didn't move on to
never
something
do
else?
it again?
Yeah. Who's to say they didn't move on to something else?
That's true. But I feel like that's such a specific
Yeah.
type of.
We need an FBI profiler on this.
That's what, and then it's you'll never know because all that stuff is sealed.
Even from the
I
FBI?
would like to see, because that's who is investigating it.
Hmm.
So all that stuff sealed, because that would be interesting to me if they did a profile.
Yeah. Because
I don't know if they would have much to go on because that's never happened before.
well, even just I'm not an expert, but they didn't do the right amount of dosage. We
Yeah,
kind of just
so-
went over this,
yeah.
but there's definitely clues to some extent. They're in the Chicago area. They had to have gone to those stores to put it back on the shelves.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's random. If it was every capsule or every single drug, I don't know how drugs are made, but that would be really hard to only put them into some drugs and not others.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So that makes sense why they would think that they bought them and then put them back on the shelf, because it's impossible. It would be more widespread
Yeah.
if it was done from manufacturing level, and the fact that it was at different places.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, I'm just upset.
I know.
I'm just
So-
upset. I'm sorry.
So
And
the
I'm sure other people
Tylenol
are.
killer is 1, 2, 3.
Tylenol. No.
Well, never
TK.
know.
Tylenol killer is the Tylenol killer.
I feel like if that would have happened at a time when more technology was around, how we were talking about how in the first episode how often you're on camera,
Yeah.
I feel like they would have had
yeah.
that would have been so easy because you would have just looked at the video feed
Mm-hmm.
of all those stores and you would have had a common person.
But didn't you say they caught someone on camera with the
Well,
beard?
that's just the one person that was, quote, a person of interest that looked like Ted Kaczynski or the Lewis guy. But it's so grainy, I don't think they could ever do anything more with it. And I don't know if that...
is that even the right picture from the right time? Who's to say?
I don't know. And
People
I don't
fitting
know,
in the facts they want to fit in.
Yeah, and I don't know if that picture was important because they also found another picture of the guy at this different one. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's more of it looks like Ted Kaczynski.
Yeah, and then to that point too, the bigger question of we still don't know, and why hasn't this?
Mm-hmm.
Why is there no resolution? It feels like the answer was, we're gonna make it so it's harder for them to do it.
Yeah.
The end.
Yeah.
That doesn't make anyone feel any better. No, it
No.
doesn't make me feel better.
Nope.
And also the fact that it's not talked about anymore.
Mm-hmm. It's still an open case.
Yeah.
Supposedly.
And I know that open cases are open because they can't be solved, but there's got to be someone working on these. If you're going to look at open cases, start with one that's a big deal. But again, they resolved it in the way that it can't happen as easily.
Mm-hmm.
That's just upsetting. I'm sorry. I think I'm talking in circles, but I'm trying to wrap my head around the fact that that's okay? Question mark.
Yep.
And we're accepting of that?
Mm-hmm.
Question mark. Maybe I'm not trying to start a revolt, but
Because
at least,
now it's check your medicine, and if it's
tampered or
if the
open
seal's
or,
broken or whatever, then
Mhm.
don't take it.
Don't
I
take-
know,
yeah,
you're
don't-
supposed
I
to
mean,
give it to
100%.
someone.
Yeah, you'd bring it back to the pharmacist. And also on prescriptions, I don't know about over the counter. I would hope it says on over the counter, but on your prescriptions it says it describes what the pill should look like.
Oh, that's
so
smart.
I found that really helpful too. Prescriptions for sure. Over the counter, probably should look that up. But just if it looks weird or it tastes weird or if it smells like cyanide, which some people have the ability to smell, it smells like bitter almonds.
Oh, yeah.
If you can smell bitter almonds.
But only half the population can do that.
Yeah. So find a friend, say, what does it smell like?
We have a 50-50 chance of
knowing whether or not, but just don't waste drugs. Let people get better.
Yeah, that brings up the whole, and then like if you want to leave drugs to the side, and then it's like, how easy could it be to poison food at the grocery store?
Please stop talking. I know, it makes you question everything, which we want you to question.
Yeah, but that is a good thing too, not necessarily if it's poison or not, but just make sure it's not bad. I've had that before where I take like a yogurt home that has kind of like more of a lid thing on top of the seal, and then you take it home and it's like been punctured or something.
Yep.
It's like, oh, cool.
Or even
Always
like,
check.
I had a bag of chips.
Oh, yeah.
I was so bummed. I had a bag of chips. I'm like, score, I got to eat these, salt and vinegar chips. And I go to open them, and the top is just a little bit cracked. My voice cracked. Just a little cracked at the top.
Yeah.
And it's like, did that pop because I pushed on them and then the pressure inside the bag made them open? Or what if that one time someone did sprinkle some cyanide salt or something bad on it? Is that worth? That's what it comes down to for me. Is like,
is it worth it?
Yeah, it's not worth it. I would not. I would rather.
Did you eat those chips?
I did not. I threw them away. I didn't offer them to anyone, even though I wanted to at least like not have them go to waste.
Oh, was that day you gave me your chips?
No. I wanted you around so we could do this. Had it all on my plan. It's all on my plan. Yeah, just don't. If it looks weird, tastes weird, spit it out.
Yeah, I think this is kind of follows.
That's what she said? Question mark. Like, just don't do it.
Yeah, I feel like this goes along to the lines of, or falls under the category of following your gut.
Yeah.
More so.
Yeah.
I think in terms of over-the-counter medication, like what you were saying, I think it is kind of more solved in terms of it's a lot easier to know if someone's tampered with it.
Yeah.
Just where it's kind of sad for me because it's like where all of that stuff came from, like all those 7 people who died now, like I feel like they died for those safety precautions kind of thing. We don't have the like peace of mind for their family. Yeah, it's kind of like we've gotten all this like safety and positive things from them, and yet we haven't been able to like give justice.
The resolution. Yeah, that's a really good point.
So
and that's sad.
Yeah,
it shouldn't. It was a lot of, and of course it's 7 people, but there's a lot of people who love them, and so all those lives are affected, and it's all very awful. Yeah. And it doesn't have to be that way. But thank goodness that the government did take it seriously and made the seals and whatnot. So
yeah, so now that's a requirement.
Yeah,
for production,
which is good, and hopefully they're doing all their background checks on everyone who works there. Yeah, but those are reputable companies. Like I would assume that they're doing a really good job of making sure you have to have some. That's huge. Those are very big responsibilities, You have
a lot of trust in people. Well, I guess I don't know. It's probably all even assembly line or like machinery now.
Yeah, maybe.
But
people still have to oversee the machines before they take over the world. But crazy.
Yeah. So that's
now that we feel like sad because we don't know, who did it. But
if you have any theories,
or you know something or something like that,
or if you were around in those times.
Way back in the 80s.
Because we're young ish.
We were,
we were not alive.
Yet. So, not long after.
But we weren't. Around.
Wish we were.
We have no memories of that time.
No. But we know that a lot of people do. And if you want to describe like how it was in that time, I mean, I talked to my dad about it because he was around in that time. And, like, I was just like, oh, like, how was it during, do you remember the Tylenol recall and all that? And he's like, yeah. He said that he was kind of out of high school at that point. So he thought of it as more of like it's only going to affect like older people who take medications, because he wasn't like taking any like headache medication or anything like that, because they're just like rocking out, and I don't know but people were doing in the 80s, having a good time. Let's just say that.
Nice.
And that it was kind of, although he didn't really think he didn't think about it as affecting him, because he was younger, he doesn't take as much medicine. He still said it was that weird feeling of, just because it happens to someone else, like, that was someone else. Let me back up. Usually situations like that, you're like, that's not going to happen to me like that. That's like a one-off thing that happens to them. But this was kind of the first time in his life, at least, that he realized that this is something that could easily happen to anybody, because over-the-counter medicine is so accessible. And to think like that level of vulnerability from the public, that it is kind of like you're more accessible to being exposed to that.
Yeah, it's kind of a scary realization.
Yeah, kind of like what we're having right now, that it does happen, and obviously it has happened. Then it happened, 270 more times.
Yeah.
With different circumstances.
So messed up.
Yeah. It's just, so, the government did what they had to do, and people were greatly affected, and thank goodness we've taken measures to overcome that. I'm sure stuff bad still does happen, but at least people are more aware of what to look for. It's more obvious.
Yeah.
So, but anyways, thanks for listening with your heart and soul.
Thank you.
We're sorry if we offended any big pharma.
They can also write in.
And these are all opinions. These are not accusations.
No.
And they're online, because maybe Katie's are, but they're online. I'm just kidding. Conspiracy theories.
It wasn't me.
I
just read them. It's online.
Yeah, she's reading them online. And we'll have, of course, like we said before, we'll have these sources up on the website. If you'd like to follow us, we are at Instagram at You're Not Paranoid. No apostrophe, but it is spelled your, like R-E. And then you can send us your stories or feedback, whatever, at you'renotparanoid@gmail.com.
Yay. So thank you.
Thanks. Adios. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.